was October 7th, 1988. On the remote Arctic coast of Point Barrow, Alaska, known for its harsh, treeless tundra and dangerous terrain, a hunter traversing the windswept area stumbled upon 3 young gray whales trapped in the ice. He chipped open holes for them to breathe, but cutting a path to the ocean with only a chainsaw would be impossible. So he made a call for help, kicking off a rescue mission that brought together not only Alaskan natives, oil companies, and the U.S. military, but also the Soviet Union. You see, not long after the Alaskan National Guard's quest to free the whales was underway, a young White House staffer named Bonnie reached out to see how the president could help. Tom Carroll, who was commanding the mission, took the call and Operation Breakthrough began. It was a rare instance of American and Soviet cooperation during the Cold War, involving helicopters, cranes, and icebreaker ships to save the whales. This cooperative mission also brought together the power couple, Bonnie and Tom, and they fell in love. Bonnie moved to Alaska to marry Tom and start their life together. Tom climbed the ranks, pinning on a star and becoming the Adjutant General of the Alaskan National Guard. The couple was committed to their military service, and the future was promising. In November 1992, about 4 years after they met, Tom and 7 others were on a routine flight on a National Guard plane to Juneau, Alaska, when, tragically, the plane crashed, killing everyone on board. If a soldier falls, service does not end. The uniform is folded, the formation disperses, but for families, the mission changes. Grief, memory, and responsibility arrive all at once, and there is no handbook for what comes next. For many families, the days after loss are marked by silence and uncertainty. Questions replace routines. Support fades faster than grief. Yet, some families choose to carry service forward, not through rank or position, but through caring for others who are walking the same unfamiliar road. Bonnie Carroll, suddenly a young widow after Tom died, experienced a lot of uncertain time on her own. But grief did not stop her from remedying the gap in support that military families faced. She established TAPS, which is now the national nonprofit organization providing compassionate care and comprehensive resources to all those grieving a death in the military or veteran community. In today's episode, Bonnie and fellow Gold Star spouse Jennie Taylor join our co-hosts to share how TAPS came to be, the cost of service before and after loss, and why they continue to build community and connection for military families nationwide. I'm Carrie Varohaikis, and this is Army Matters.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Army Matters. Yes, your favorite Army podcast. And I'm Lieutenant General retired Leslie C. Smith, and I'm the 66th Inspector General, retired, of course. And I'm here with my good friend, my best buddy.
I'm Sergeant Major of the Army, retired Dan Dailey. I'm the co-host with Mr. Leslie C. Smith, the 66th. And we got another great episode for our listeners today, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We do.
But I'm leading, so I get to ask the questions first.
You get to ask questions?
I do.
All right.
This time. Can I start?
I guess so.
So Dan, this one has a very interesting start to it. And I think this would be appropriate to ask you this question first.
Okay, I'm ready.
Right. Have you ever been fishing in Alaska?
Well, I go for the Alaskan salmon run every year, right? So salmon spend 2 years out in the ocean. Well, first they spawn up inside the rivers in Alaska, and then they swim down the rivers and spend 2 years, and then they come in all at the same time.
Okay.
And last year, for example, almost, I think, 5 million sockeye came. And
5 million?
Yes, yeah. And that was just in the Kenai River. And,
a lot.
And the salmon, they fight so hard and they taste so good, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a wonderful time. A bunch of us retired veterans all get together every year and go up there and we do the salmon run. And if you haven't done the salmon run, you got to try it.
I'm going to try it just because you said that. So one other question, since I get to ask you questions, since I haven't done that before. But why do you think the salmon taste so good? Because they work so hard, or what do you think?
Well, they start their lives off as little salmon eggs, and then they spawn a little fry, and then they work their way down the river, and then they go out in the ocean, and they eat in the ocean for like 2 years. And so I guess because they exercise and eat healthy.
Exercise and eat healthy. Okay. Yeah, we've had some podcasts to talk about that.
Yeah.
Next question is, what would you say, besides fishing, what do you like the most about Alaska?
Oh, I took a helicopter ride from Fairbanks, Alaska, up to the Northern Warfare Winter Training Center.
Nice.
And, just a couple feet off the ground, across a huge tundra, Alaskan tundra, where you see moose, and it's just amazing. And you see nothing but nature. I mean, for hours, right? And you're like, wow, there's places like this on the earth that exist, right? Because, I mean, even a desert, right? You drive out in the desert and you see things, right? You see human touches on the planet. But when I was on the helicopter, it didn't look like anybody had ever been there before.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Breathtaking.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I would say for me is the vastness also.
Yeah.
But you know what is up in Alaska? North Pole, Alaska.
I think it's farther north than Alaska, isn't it? The North Pole.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a city called North Pole in Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like the old joke. Do you know the capital of Alaska?
No. Where is it?
Juneau.
Juneau?
Didn't. There you go.
Okay.
We
digress.
That's the extent of our humor here, listeners.
Yes,
that's the extent of it.
So who are we talking about today?
So one of our two guests today is Bonnie Carroll. Many people know her. She runs an amazing foundation called TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors.
Yeah.
So instead of me trying to figure out what the right story is, why don't we bring Bonnie and Jennie on the show?
Bonnie and Jennie, welcome to Army Matters. Please introduce yourself briefly and tell us what you do, and then we're going to jump into some questions.
Thanks so much, Les. It's so good to be with you.
Okay.
And I really, really proud to be here with Jennie today. So I'm Bonnie Carroll. I am the surviving spouse of a soldier who was killed along with 7 other soldiers in an Army plane crash that happened back in the early 90s. And at that time, I was serving as a reserve officer myself. General Marty Dempsey is on our board. And as he is fond of saying, he said the military does a magnificent job of rendering final honors, providing the final resting place, and administering benefits to those who are eligible. But then it's really up to us to come together and support each other and fill the gaps with additional resources and support. So in 1994, TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, was launched to be that home for all of us grieving a loss. Today, to give you an idea of the need, we've got this past year, nearly 10,000 new families coming to TAPS for that support.
Okay, great. Jennie.
I first met Bonnie when I entered the world of being a military survivor. My husband was killed in Afghanistan in November of 2018. My husband and I have 7 kids. At the time, our oldest had just turned 13, and our youngest celebrated her first birthday 2 days after her father's funeral. Our journey as survivors began 7 years ago. My husband's final deployment was 8 years ago. It was about a year into it when he was killed. So we are learning to navigate what life after that kind of loss looks like, what legacy looks like, what service and sacrifice feel like. And organizations like TAPS and the work that Bonnie has done now for decades, I'm one of the greatest beneficiaries. We are the reason that her programs are so necessary, so needed. We are one family of thousands that benefit from that. And I'm grateful for her and the work that she does, the advocacy that she's now done for years that has paved the way so that at the time my husband was killed, there were lots of resources ready for us. We didn't have to navigate the newness of it like she did. And so we'll forever be grateful for that as a family.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Bonnie, tell us a little bit about your military service in the early 90s. What was your job?
I actually was in the Air National Guard. Started out with the 113th Tactical Fighter Wing and the DC Air Guard, and then met and married my wonderful husband. And off we go to Alaska. He was on the Army Guard side, and I was commanding the motor pool in the 176th Wing up in Anchorage, Alaska. I was also, for a period, a technician as the wing executive officer.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, the most important thing, I started out enlisted and made it all the way up to staff sergeant. It was extremely competitive to make E6. I switched over, applied for a commission, received that. So I retired as a major.
Wow. So, Bonnie, I didn't know that you were enlisted before commissioning. That's very cool.
I was just going to say my husband actually received a battlefield commission very, very young. And when he was selected, he was the youngest general officer that year in the Army and had to go back and get his college degree because he'd gone all the way up through the ranks, Army War College and all, but had not yet finished that step. So anyway, we're both very unusual in our progression through the military.
That's cool. So Jennie, you have more than one child.
I have 7 children.
Yeah. So 7 children.
Yeah.
What is a house like?
Sheer chaos.
Yeah. Explain. What does the morning look like? I mean, Dan has one. I have 2. We have 2. Dan and Holly have 1. I mean, explain to our listeners, what does the morning look like? How do you get all those 7 organized and out the door?
Well, the goal is to get them out the door. I don't know how organized we are to do it. I try to wake up early before they get up. I go to the gym. I do my own personal scripture and prayer meditation to start the morning as calmly as I can. And then the floodgates just open once they're up. We make some kind of breakfast and argue over why you have to eat breakfast and not soda and chips for breakfast. It's a lot of fun. Keeps me... I would say it keeps me young, but it doesn't. I feel older and older with every passing day. It definitely keeps me purposeful. Yeah. Thank you.
I want to go back to something we ask many of our attendees to Army Matters is, do you come from a family of service? Jennie, could you share that with us?
Yes. So I do not come from a military background, and neither did my husband. We both had grandfathers that served in World War II for amount of time, but that was kind of more tradition of the generation. My husband was from a very patriotic home, and I grew up always feeling patriotic. The very beginning of 2003, I had just gotten home from serving a church mission in Chile for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'd been there a year and a half. Shortly after my mission, I met my husband. When I was set up on a blind date, he had been working with recruiters. He'd been wanting to join the military since he was a child and really solidified that decision after those terrorist attacks of 2001. And so he enlisted. We actually got engaged on a Saturday. He enlisted on a Tuesday. I was right there with him. We got married 3 months later, and he shipped out 4 months after that. And he was gone pretty much the first year of our marriage between basic training and AIT. My husband joined, and he ended up with 5 of his 6 brothers also joining the Army National Guard, again, in those early years after 2001. So we became very much a military family. And so of his 15 years in the National Guard, he was on active duty nearly 8 of those, including 4 combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. He was killed on his 4th deployment.
So, Bonnie, help us out here. What does service mean to your family before the loss? And tell us about your family life day to day.
Oh, service means everything. I actually am the daughter of a mom who flew in World War II as part of the Women's Army Air Corps. My husband also was the son of a soldier. His father was killed in an Army plane crash when he was 15 years old. So 3 out of the 4 brothers in the family immediately joined the Army right after high school and went off to serve. So we come from a family of service, and I think you find that in many, that it's a legacy.
How about you, Jennie? You talked about a little bit. What does service mean in your household before loss?
I think service looked like being willing to help those around you, maybe before you help yourself. We always tried to teach our children that service can have different looks. It might be to, an old lady down the street, or maybe you're shoveling snow for someone. My husband was involved with political service and public service. And I think it was just a way of life to where the mindset was, who can we help today? What needs can we see? And how can we maybe take initiative to meet some of those needs in whatever way or capacity we might be able to?
So, Bonnie, I know this is difficult, but can you take us back to the early days, immediately after your loss? And can you share with us, how did it affect you?
Boy, at this point in my husband's career, it was kind of the last thing that we expected to happen. He served in combat, had been at risk so many times, and this was just so hard to understand. Today, with our TAPS families, the majority of deaths are coming as a result of suicide or illness, coming in such an unexpected way. And especially, when the public, Jennie, I think what you saw with the outpouring of support for your community, that kind of isn't the journey with many of our families today when it is a quieter loss. So it, for our family, it was just a complete shock.
Yeah, I understand that. Jennie, what about you?
I echo the word shock. We had been through different deployments, and I think we'd gotten to the point where we thought you're going to deploy and come back and deploy and come back. And so when you deploy, you come back. I think the hardest moment to this day still remains the children. The casualty notification officers let me know first, and then just thinking, we've got to tell my 7 kids and letting them know. And I remember the immediate thought I had was, I don't have 7 arms. I can't, even if I tried, I can't console and comfort each one of them. And then being able to deal with your own grief and a child's grief and different grief. Grief looks so different for each person, even within the same family, that knowing how to navigate and how to help, sometimes your efforts to help actually make it worse. And things are so tricky with children in different developmental stages. So even to this day, the finding place to try to remain positive and optimistic and honor and be grateful for my husband's service while still living in the aftermath of the fact that he's just not here anymore.
Yeah. Bonnie and Jennie, what did you need the most at the time of the loss that you did not yet have? Let's start with you, Bonnie.
Gosh, and Jennie, I mean, just the connection you and I instantly had because of the same lived experience is really what I was missing. Nobody at my work understood. They didn't know how to talk to me, so they just didn't. They just avoided me. It wasn't until I actually ran into 4 of the other widows from my husband's crash at a memorial service. And we kind of just stumbled into each other. We decided to go for coffee. Coffee led to lunch, to the afternoon, to dinner. We shut the place down. And that's where we found understanding and community and support, and a place that was just this safe space to talk without judgment, to honor our loved ones, to talk about the amazing men that we'd lost, and just find that comfort that we could only get from each other. And that's really how TAPS was founded, just to bring a community together who get it, who can provide support.
Yeah. How about you, Jennie?
I'd echo that 100%. Just finding someone who, without words, knows maybe a little bit of what you're feeling, who doesn't avoid you at the grocery store because they're afraid that you might cry and your tears might embarrass them, and no one knows quite how to handle those awkward elephant in the room moments. I think what another need I think a lot of survivors feel, and I definitely have felt this, is the ability to be okay talking about the person that I've lost. And maybe sometimes in a funny, silly way, as I think of something lighthearted, maybe in a more moving, emotional, heavy way, and being okay that might bring emotion and not being afraid of that, either myself or afraid that it will bother people around me. And so as for my kids' perspectives, I need them to know their dad was also human. He wasn't only a superhero. He he was a person, and I want them to know that personal side. So that space to be able to remember the whole person, not just how they died or when they died or where they died, but who they were, how they're part of us today, and finding people who've been through a similar experience, though unique. There is that instant connection. And again, I can't thank Bonnie and the other advocates enough. By the time my husband was killed in 2018, a lot of that did exist. They were able to say, hey, Mrs. Taylor, let me show you, let me help you, let me hold your hand. And so we, 30 years later, are just such recipients of so many years of advocacy work done before us.
Yeah. And Jennie, you sparked something I wanted to dive into here, and you talked a little bit about it, but I'd like both of you to elaborate. What do people often misunderstand about folks like you that have this tragic loss, other people that don't go through? What do you think they misunderstand about that? Bonnie, go ahead.
Well, grief is not a mental illness. Grief is not, I wish it was so simple. I wish it was something we could, take a pill for. A lot of people, would look at folks like Jennie and I and say, oh, you should see someone or get grief counseling. But it really doesn't work like that. This isn't a mental health issue. This is the normal human response to the loss of a loved one. And in the military, it coupled with honoring a life that included service to this nation. So there are kids at Good Grief Camp. We wear photo buttons. We share pictures. We talk about the person. It's so important.
Hey, did you get your AUSA merch yet? Check out our online selection at shop.ausa.org.
Welcome back to Army Matters. Bonnie, you and Jennie have so much in common. Tell us, how did you both first meet?
Oh, gosh, I was immediately aware, of course, of Jennie's loss, and my heart was with her from the first moment, even though it would be a while before we met in person, but just reaching out to let her family know. We have a great connection with Dover, so during the dignified transfer, there was information there that TAPS is a community of support available.
Explain to our listeners what happens up at Dover. I mean, we understand, we've been there, but explain to our listeners what's going on.
Well, my experience at Dover, we flew in, we were taken care of from the moment we got to the airport. We were escorted, wonderful people at the USO. They take you to the Fisher House is a beautiful, wonderful resource where we can stay, feel right at home. I had 2 of my boys with me, and they were treated like princes. I mean, they gave them treats and candy and anything they wanted, and showed them a fridge full of food and wanted to make sure they were physically comfortable. And then we were there for a little while. They explained to us the process of what to expect from in terms of mortuary affairs. They explained to us what to expect for a dignified transfer. And then we were taken to the dignified transfer after having an opportunity to meet with some distinguished visitors in a reception room. So military leaders, civic and government leaders, different people attending at different times, very somber, but again, a very dignified way to come together and say that those words we hear all the time, sorry for your loss, but spoken from the heart. And then after that reception, we were taken to the tarmac. In our case, it was the middle of the night. I never once saw the sun shine in Dover. We were taken to some chairs on the dark tarmac in the middle of the night as the aircraft that had my husband's remains landed. Very respectfully, his casket was transferred from the aircraft, carried by the dignified transfer itself is the soldiers, of course, carrying that flag casket toward the mortuary vehicle, where it's then very dignified, loaded in, taken, and then his body was taken and prepared for burial. Everything about it was respectful, was somber, and in our case was dark. I remember seeing generals and other military personnel standing at attention, very crisp, very, very ceremonial. There wasn't a word spoken. It's quiet. You watch. You don't hear anything. No one says anything. I do remember that they had members of the media there, but the media were behind us. They weren't allowed to take any media coverage of me or the children, my in-laws, but they were able to capture that transfer. And I'm grateful they were. I'm grateful anytime I can see another military personnel when their remains are transferred. There's something very dignified about it. It's appropriately named. So the dignified transfer from the aircraft to the soldiers or whichever military members onto the military affairs mortuary vehicle. And very quick, only lasts a couple of minutes, and then you're put back in the vehicle and taken back to the Fisher house. Again, very little is said, but volumes are spoken through the experience.
So how did your paths cross with Bonnie?
At the White House, my husband was killed in November. The following May, my children and I, a couple of us were invited to a ceremony at the White House around Memorial Day. Bonnie, of course, was there as a distinguished visitor herself, the distinguished guest. And I remember just looking at this woman thinking, here she is all these years later and still remembering and honoring her husband, but in a positive, beautiful way. I am just a big fangirl of this woman's advocacy. She didn't just take her hurt and sit with it. She didn't even just take her hurt and grow through it. She took her hurt and grew the rest of us through it. So I'm a big Bonnie Carroll and TAPS fan.
Yeah, me too. Bonnie, can you describe to our listeners? I've heard their story, and it is incredibly amazing. The exact time, the location, and the reason you decided we needed TAPS.
It really was reconnecting with the other survivors and just finding out, as Jennie said, we have this bond and we are a community and we can help each other. And that really is the only way that we're going to go forward. And it didn't exist in America. You know, there are support organizations for all sorts of other loss because, my God, this is America and we have a group for everything. But we never had it for military surviving families. Just to have this community of care and healing and hope. And especially when I see the kids at the Good Grief Camp, you know, that at the last Good Grief Camp, this little kid, just, you know, knee high, comes running full speed up to another child about his height and just blurts out, "Is your dad dead?" And the other little kid nods like, "Yes, me too." And they're showing pictures and photo buttons and, you know, and my dad was in the Army and they said, "Let's be best friends." And off they went. And they created this just normalizing that they're not alone. There are all sorts of different resources available for those not in a duty status at the time of their death. And TAPS can just fill those gaps. So thanks for that.
So, Jennie, we're going to talk about your TED Talk. You asked, is the price of freedom worth it? How did that question emerge for you?
I was asked it quite a few times, whether explicitly or implied. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to have a husband serve with the risk of not coming back? Is it worth it now to be a mom with all of these kids? Do I regret it? Do I begrudge it? And so in the time between when my husband was killed and when I gave that talk, I think it'd been a question that had just been asked of me so many times. I wanted to help give voice to how I viewed that question and what I think the response has to be for all of us.
But Jen, let me follow up with that. What would you tell a family in the first days after losing a loved one? And also, what would you tell the friends and family regarding how they can help and support and truly help?
Oh my goodness. I think Bonnie and I would both tread very carefully on what to tell anyone in those first days of loss because it's so unique. It's so raw. Even though there's some universal components, it's still so individual. But I think the first thing I would want to remind someone going through particularly military loss is that there is a great honor in knowing someone and loving someone who is willing to serve, sacrifice, and even die for the freedoms that we get to enjoy. And so in the grief and in the hurt, don't forget the honor and the gratitude. Don't forget the celebration of life, as Bonnie said, not just the passing of death. Maybe imagine if it were you. If you were the lady next door with 7 kids and her husband had just been killed in Afghanistan, she might need dinner. She might need someone to shovel the snow. She might need someone to take the trash can out on Monday morning because she doesn't know what day it is, let alone what day the garbage man comes. I mean, little things, right? We want to solve everything for those in need, and we do. We want to fix it. We want to fix it. We want to fix it. I think it's our job as fellow human beings to just help each other face it. How can I help you face today? Maybe I could feed you so that you don't have to make dinner. Maybe I could let the kids run around and play because kids just want to be normal. So I would just say, imagine, and then act on what you imagine and take the risk of being wrong, because by doing something, you're at least conveying that you're here, that you love, that you care, even if you don't know exactly the right, perfectly tailored thing to do or say.
That's great. So last question, starting with you, Bonnie. Any other final takeaways you want listeners to leave this conversation and changing the way they serve veterans and their families?
It is about honoring the lives and the service. As Jennie said so beautifully, really recognizing just that service and that commitment to give of yourself right up to the ultimate sacrifice begins with the oath of enlistment, and that we honor that life. And regardless of how or where a death may occur, it is about honoring the life lived, to ask about the person, to get to know that story, that life story, and whether the death occurred in a motorcycle accident, a suicide on the battlefield, or from an illness or injuries years after that service, recognizing that this is an individual who stepped forward to serve in defense of democracy.
So, Jennie, how about you?
I think it's something that's just now a part of us. It's a part of our family. I don't need vinyl on the wall to remind me freedom isn't free. They feel that, they know that, they appreciate that. And as Bonnie just said so beautifully, I hope they remember to honor that. Your dad's service and sacrifice has taught you what these different things mean. Don't you dare waste that loss. Don't you dare let that tragedy stay tragic. The real tragedy would be if we learned nothing from it, if we were not motivated by it. And that, to me, is what honor is all about in the world as a survivor, is honoring these collective sacrifice of 250 years of American military by just trying to live a beautiful, wonderful life that is my version of the American dream that they fought and died to protect.
Yeah. But thanks so much, ladies, Bonnie and Jennie. This has been great. We could keep talking to you guys for another hour or so, but really appreciate your service on so many levels.
I want to obviously acknowledge your loss, but thank you for your not service in the past, but your continued service, which is amazing because you're helping others heal too. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, it's an honor to do this. And Jennie, it was so good to be with you always.
Oh, Bonnie, same to you.
Thank you so much.
To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Army Matters is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at ausa.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission, educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and supporters of a strong national defense. Today's episode was hosted by Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith and SMA Retired Dan Dailey, and anchor hosted by Carrie Barrow-Heckes. Andy Bosnack is the associate producer and supervising sound editor. Major Ryan Crane is the writer, and Ellen Toner is the content editor. Umzinga Curry is the executive producer. Carrie Barrow-Heckes is the senior producer, and Savannah Campbell-Smith is the producer. Be sure to subscribe to Army Matters wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. As you know, we love seeing stars in the Army, especially if it comes in the form of a 5-star review. AUSA's Army Matters podcast can also be heard on Reach Across America Radio on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app with the search of the word Wreath. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. AUSA's Army Matters podcast primary purpose is to entertain. The podcast does not constitute advice or services. While guests are invited to listen, listeners, please note that you're not being provided professional advice from the podcast or the guest. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of AUSA. I'm LaSharon Duncan, hoping you have a great Army day. Hooah!